Joining me now on set, Josh Kraushaar. He's the senior political correspondent for Axios. Former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman and NBC News political analyst Donna is here. And the former chairman of the RNC, Michael Steele. He's also an NBC News political analyst. You know, Josh, let's talk about DeSantis here. You know, Iowans will punish podium candidates. And Donald Trump is one who got punished. Donald Trump, first time he tried to campaign in Iowa with an airplane hangar. And the guy who did more retail politics, Ted Cruz, ended up winning it. If we have two podium candidates, it almost leaves an opening in Iowa if he's not careful.
Well, look, first of all, I think this is a big test for Ron DeSantis because the rap on DeSantis is that he doesn't have the personal style, that he doesn't like to go to the town halls and do the grip and grins. And this is, you know, he's doing the book tour, but he looked pretty comfortable out there, Chuck. And I think this is like spring training. He's getting some batting practice to see how he can do with the retail politics. I also thought his speech was really interesting, and it tells you a lot of where the Republican Party is right now.
Right.
We could have a drinking game with woke.
My goodness, yeah, woke, yeah.
But that is the one issue, that's the only issue really that unites the Republican Party these days. Foreign policy, entitlements, spending, you know, almost all the issues that define the Reagan coalition are now dividing the party, and DeSantis is the one guy who feels like he's united it by talking about those woke issues.
Michael, it's interesting. The DeSantis people are aware that they're going to be judged about whether they're any good at campaigning. And so check out the blind quote that they gave to CNN, according to a source. Blind quote, so, you know, because the DeSantis people don't deal with mainstream media. Right. Ron DeSantis has never been successful because he's the best campaigner, this source said. He's been successful because he's been the best governor. Primary voters are less concerned if you're having coffee with them than if you are authentic and doing what you say you're going to do. I get it that Iowa and New Hampshire voters are used to a certain campaign style, and he'll have to consider those factors. But Republican primary voters are so concerned with the direction of the country, and those things will be less important.
No, they're not. That is such a crock. No.
But isn't it admitting that they know that he is a problem?
The guy is not, he's not a glad hander. He's never has been. He doesn't like it. You talk to governors around the country who've been at events with him, whether they're on the National Governor Association or the Republican Governor Association. He's an aloof guy. He just is. That's his style. It works in Florida. It ain't going to work in Iowa. It's not going to work in New Hampshire. They've got to figure out how to get him comfortable with that, because the one thing I can tell you, and all of us here at this table know this, voters have a very keen sixth sense about a person when they walk up to meet them.
Right.
And you look them in the eye and you shake their hand, and in that moment it tells you everything you want to know about that person. And if you're interested in them or not, or in all of that. And that has to come from him. And I don't know if it is yet. I don't know if it will. How does he translate outside of Florida? They think Florida is a blueprint for the country. I'm telling you, it ain't. But, you know.
We're going to find out. You know, Donna, the other thing that I think is interesting is I've been comparing DeSantis to George W. Bush, right? It's not since George W. Bush that we had sort of a sitting governor almost waiting in the wings. George W. Bush started his Iowa campaign with a general election message and played some primary politics. I don't know what the DeSantis general election message is. He's clearly not doing it. That was a primary speech.
No, it was, and I think that DeSantis feels that in order to get this nomination, that he has to go hard at the Trump base, and that will get him over the top. It doesn't do anything for him in a general election. I think quite the opposite. And when I listen to DeSantis, you know, he's used to running campaigns that are in a media-driven state. And Iowa and New Hampshire, I've been in Iowa, we've all been in Iowa and New Hampshire, you know, grip and grin, go into the living rooms and the coffee shops and the diners and talk to people. And they view themselves, those voters view themselves as really highly sophisticated voters who ask really tough questions. You're not going to get over that by just, you know, pouting a campaign theme and saying, you know, a wokeocracy in a campaign.
Here's what I do know, Josh. I don't know who's going to be the Pizza Ranch candidate or the, you know, or the Pete Buttigieg, but we know this person gets rewarded by Iowans. Somebody is going to be the person that does the old school way, and they'll be the chief challenger to either DeSantis or Trump.
And there's space if DeSantis gets in and Trump goes after DeSantis, DeSantis goes after Trump. There is going to be a lane for a third candidate.
I think there is, too.
Nikki Haley spent a lot of time
and she's playing a Pizza Ranch game.
She's going to the retail stops. I think there is a room for a more optimistic conservative message as well. The question is who's going to fill.
Right, literally a conservative Pete Buttigieg, because that's what he sort of created for himself. That it almost worked.
I disagree with that. I think Trump's got it. The man's sitting at 80%. Who peels off? Where does that 80% peel off? How does it peel off? They're bought in with him.
So indicted former President Donald Trump doesn't lose.
Lock and load.
You don't think
Lock
it loses
and load.
Yeah.
He is being set up to become a national martyr for the MAGA base. And at 80% in Iowa, he's not going to drop to 50.
But he could drop to 50 and still win.
Yeah, but
thank you. That's my point. He could drop to 50 and still win. And so the reality for anyone getting in this race is, how do I get that 80% on my side of the tracks? And I don't see the lane. I don't see how you get there if Trump is going to engage. He's going to ignore these indictments.
Trump wants the indictment.
Yes.
Because he does. He wants that because that's the way.
I think. But I take your point.
Yeah.
I see where you're going. Yeah. No, finish it.
No, he does. And I mean, he wants that because he knows that is what generates the excitement and enthusiasm in his base, and he's going to retain that. Who peels off the rest to get to 50%?
Josh, what if folks told you on the other campaigns about how they handle the legal problems of Trump?
I agree with what Donna's saying, that the legal problems are beneficial in the primary to Donald Trump because it feeds on the voters' sense of grievance. Now, and I also think that the news that the one indictment that may be closest to coming down the pike is about Stormy Daniels.
Yeah. Again, it's 2 campaigns ago, as I point out, 2 presidential campaigns ago.
And over hush, I mean, that would be music, I think, to the Trump campaign. Look, I don't think he wants to deal with the legal issues. I don't think that that's an issue they want to face. But politically, if the New York prosecutor indicts Trump on the Stormy Daniels hush money, that would be feeding the sense of grievance, I think, a whole lot
They
more.
didn't care about the Access Hollywood tapes. Why are they going to care about Stormy Daniels in a primary?
Yeah.
I said they didn't care about Access Hollywood in the general. Why are they going to care about Stormy Daniels in a primary?
It has been, that is, that's always the, what about that? Right?
And which of his opponents are going to go directly at him? We haven't heard that yet. We haven't heard a single attack coming from any of these prospective candidates against Trump. How do you knock a guy down if you're not willing to go at him?
Even mention his name.
And I only hear it in calls and emails to me.
Right.
I don't know about you, because they all make this case. And and in fact, the one I hear, the one that they get the most animated about is, he only can hit 1 term.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if voters care about that.
Well, and the campaigns thought a couple months ago that Trump was going to fade on his own after that Mar-a-Lago dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye, and that didn't happen. I don't think they've adjusted their strategies to the reality that Trump has actually gained momentum. As you noted, Michael, he's gained support in the latest round of polls because no one wants to go after him. No one wants to hit him directly. And eventually, I'm getting 2016 deja vu all over again.
Right. By the way, we see it in the Fox depositions.
Thank you.
Like, they're afraid of him. They all hate him. They all want him to go away. They don't do it. They all say, geez, I hope the New York Times takes him down.
Right.
I hope NBC News takes him down. You're like, guys, what do you,
The reality, again, to both of your points, is if you're not prepared to really go in the ring, go into the center of the ring, and box him into a corner and then take him out, why are you doing that?
Let me throw one more puck out here. The conservative ecosystem. Barack Obama, I would argue, in 2008, had enough of the media ecosystem that basically punished Hillary Clinton for going too negative. Right? If there was ever a point he went too far. Will Ron DeSantis have a cocoon of protection around him? And who is that cocoon? Will have it enough that it will punish Trump for going at him too hard?
I think the challenge is that it's the incentives in the conservative media ecosystem is to go further and further to the right. And Ron DeSantis has to make a decision. Does he sort of look at the donor class? Does he see that there's an open space in that center right?
Worked well for Jeb Bush.
And look, he has the credibility with the base. He already has that as governor of Florida. He has that with all the fights he's won. But he seems to feel that he needs to go even more cowbell. He needs more cowbell to take on Trump. And that is a problem, if not in the primary, certainly in the general election.
Which goes back to the original point that when your message is a hard primary message, where do you go in a general election? Which is why I said Florida is not the country. It's not going to translate all this woke stuff in Florida and all this anti-CRT. Wait till you get in front of a room full of black folks and have that conversation about black history and the black relationship to the country. What's your answer going to be?
Donna, what's interesting is 6 months ago, I did have Biden people nervous about DeSantis. I don't hear that nervousness anymore because they feel as if DeSantis is trying so hard to basically emulate Trump. They feel like they can run the same campaign.
And I think they're right about that assessment. I mean, you even look at what you hear from Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo.
Haley worries them.
Any of the
Haley makes them nervous.
It does, but here's the problem: that Nikki Haley will not do. She can't even identify where she differs with Trump. DeSantis is not willing to do that, and as long as that is the case, I think that the Biden folks should feel really good about running this campaign.
It is fascinating. What a fun conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.